Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be learning how to make this JavaScript calculator. So to show you where we're going, basically you can take two numbers and then you can choose what operation you're going to use. So if we add them, we get 143 right here in our answer location. You're going to be I'm going to teach you how to program the first button, and then you're going to be able to program each of these buttons on your own. All right, so let's head over to the REPL.it. So first things first, you guys are going to be taking my projects here, and you're going to be clicking up here, and you're going to fork it. And the reason why you're going to fork it is you're getting a copy of all of the starter code here, which we'll go through in a second. But basically, instead of starting from scratch, you're going to be able to start from having the interface, the GUI, already built. So let me fork mine. And I'm going to rename it as calculator for video. Cool. All right, so I think running them here is helpful because it lets you see like a little preview, but in general, I like to test it and run it in a separate window here. We've been talking a little bit about testing and running with the JavaScript console open, so I'm just going to do View, Developer Tools, JavaScript Console. And you notice that I'm getting the fave icon error. We talked about that a little bit. That's this error up here. So you'll notice that if you test out the code that I gave you, when you press these buttons, nothing happens. And the reason why nothing happens when you test those buttons is, although I gave you the interface, I didn't give you any of the interactability. I didn't give you any of the JavaScript. And so that's going to be the part that we have to code together today. All right, so thinking about this, let's take a look at our HTML. So it looks like the HTML has a div called calculator. I'm imagining that's probably this blue box. Top is going to be maybe this section because it looks like top contains two input fields. Okay, cool. Those input fields have IDs of A and B. Okay, then there's going to be a class called keys. If I look at that whole div called with the class of keys, that's going to be, it looks like the thing that has these operators. And you'll notice that I used span elements for these. Span elements is not an element type that we've worked with before, but a span is basically like a div. It comes with no properties of its own. The major difference is that a span element, so like a div usually takes up the entire row that it's in. So you see how this blue div gets its entire row. There's nothing else there. I mean, this is a bad example because there's nothing else to put there. But a div usually will get its entire row automatically. A span element does not get its entire row automatically, so you'll notice that these automatically are sharing a row. Okay, cool. So we've got that. And then let's see, we've got a last area thing here, which is like the answer area down here. So we've got an answer paragraph. This is the answer screen paragraph, and it looks interesting. It doesn't really look like a paragraph, but it's a paragraph type element. Okay, cool. All right, so I think we've gotten acquainted with the HTML, which is always important. The style is kind of crazy and all over the place. You can change some of the features, I would say, at the very end, but let's work on the script first. All right, so here we go. The first thing that we're going to do with JavaScript always is select all of the elements that we are going to interact with. So when I think about that, if I'm going to program this, I need to interact with the two input fields. And I also need to interact with the buttons. And I also need to interact with this answer location. So I'm just going to be programming the plus button. So I'm going to select, let me add another comment, select the input fields plus button. You're going to select all of the buttons and answer field. I don't know really what to call it. All right, so let's start with the input fields. To select those, we're going to use the same thing we always use. So we always use this line of code from the cheat sheet, document.query selector. whenever we want to select something. So I'm going to say let A input, and I'm using A input here because this is going to be A and this is going to be B, just thinking a generic like placeholder. Also, I noticed as I was going through this that this has ID of A. So I'm going to say, okay, let A input equal document.querySelector select the input with ID A. So we can see ID A right here. This input has ID B, so we're going to do the same thing there. Copy and paste. We'll let B input equal the thing with ID B, and that's this input field right here. So that's that whole grayish box. To select our plus sign, let plus button equal document dot query selector. So there's a lot of back and forth here with the code, especially because we didn't write the code. I also wrote the code last year, so I got no memory of what IDs I used here. Oh, version control, what's that? All right, it looks like it's called add button here, so let me change that back to add button. Doesn't have to match, but it's more convenient if it does. And it will be the thing with ID of add button. Let me just make sure I got that right. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, awesome. And then the last thing is this answer field. So to select that answer field, it looks like that thing, that black text box there has a class of answer and another class of screen, but it also has an ID of answer paragraph, so we're going to use the ID to select it. Let answer screen equal document dot query selector. You could just copy and paste this, but I think I might be faster. Oh, and it's the ID of answer screen, so make sure you include the hashtag. All right, so what are we doing here? Well, we're going to be typing in two numbers here and here. It doesn't read those numbers until we click this. Now click there, that word is a keyword. It should make you think about an event listener. Listen for clicking on the buttons. All right, so if we're going to listen for a click there and then do something once it's clicked, well, like listen is a generic term in this case for like wait until it's clicked. So it's going to listen until the screen is going to be like ready, it's waiting to have that clicked, and then when we click that, something will happen. So I went and I grabbed the add event listener chunk from the cheat sheet. So which button is waiting to be clicked? In my case, it's just the add button. So I'm going to do add button dot add event listener, and the event that the add button is waiting for is the click event. And it's lowercase. All event types are lowercase. All right, let's see. Our procedure goes here. So what we need to do is once it's clicked, we need to actually get the values from these input fields. And this is something we did before with the robot project. But looking down here, okay, for the material introduced in robot project, getting and storing a value from the user using an input field. All right, so we select the input field. We've already done that. We've selected our two input fields. Next up, we let the input value equal that field's value. So I'm just going to say let A equal, go to the A input field and take the value from that. And this is that code right here. So it's going to this input field where I have 3 currently, and it's going to take the value, which will be the thing the user entered into that. In order to do this next, we need to say let B equal, go to the B input field, which we selected up here, and then select from that the value, and this will be the place where I have 4 right here. All right, let's get let answer. I just want to make sure that, okay, this is answer screen. Okay, let answer equal, in this case the answer is going to be A plus B. And then what we're going to do is we calculated the answer. We need to put the answer here. To place the answer inside of this, what we need to do is we need to say answer screen. And then we need to set the text of this, the inner HTML of it, the stuff inside of the paragraph, set the inner HTML of that equal to whatever the answer was. So this should be a pretty complete code. Let's check it out. Refresh. For some reason, it's not giving me the favicon error. So 3 and 4 here. I'm going to add them, and I'll get 7. Oh, cannot set property inner HTML of null. Okay, so we've done this error before in JavaScript line 19. So 19, I'm trying to set the inner HTML of answer screen. I got to trace back here. Let answer screen equal document.querySelector. My spelling looks good there. So there must be a problem with my ID of answer screen. Oh my god. The ID here is answer paragraph. The class was answer in screen. So okay, there's a problem. So we have to change this to select the thing with ID of answer paragraph. And I guess just being consistent, I'm going to change all of these to answer paragraph as well. Because I like to, if I'm going to have the ID, I like to make the variable name match that usually. Alright, so now maybe it should work. Alright, refresh it. You can choose for yourself if I made that error intentionally. Okay, now we add them. 3 plus 4 is not 7. Crap. And this is a really funny error to me, because it's not an error that shows up in the console, because the computer is actually working fine. It's doing exactly what I said to do. Just 3 plus 4 is not 7, it's showing up as 34. Alright, so based on our lesson from last time, you may be able to tell what's going on here. Maybe it's more obvious if we do 25 plus 4, and then we add them. 254. So instead of adding these things like numbers, we have a type issue here. It's adding them like strings. It's taking the 25 and smushing it with the 4 to make 254. So what we need to do is we need to tell JavaScript that A and B, these are not strings when we're taking the values here. This is not the letters 34. This is not the letters 25 and the letters 4 to be added like letters. These are numbers. So the JavaScript has an easy way of doing that. Basically, what we can do is we can say let A equal. So A is still going to be this, but we want to force JavaScript to change the type of that from a string to a number. So what we're going to do is we're going to put number around this. And I think this is right. It's been a long time since I've done this. And what we're going to do for B is we're going to make B still the same value, but what we're going to do is we're going to turn it from a string into a number. So A is going to equal, forcing it to be a number. It's going to turn this string, 34, it was a string automatically, what the user typed in, it's going to turn it into a number. Let's see if this works. 25, 4. Yeah, so now it's actually seeing them as number data types, which is much more useful for us in this case. Alright, so we can play around with the addition button. Cool, it's working really well. I wonder what will happen if we give it something like, I don't know, x. It gives us not a number. It tried to turn x into a number, but it couldn't. Alright, so anyway, what your goal is going to be for the rest of the day is to add functionality to the other 4 buttons. So we want to make it so that this calculator, you type in any numbers that you want. I don't know, 36 and 9. We could add them, which you've seen before. Works 45, that's what we coded. But you also want to be able to do all of this stuff. Alright, so hopefully you can use this as a template and figure that out. Be careful with your data types. Make sure that they're numbers in the end when you're working with them. Alright, I hope you found this video interesting and helpful, and it's cool kind of maybe how that error shows up. I'm going to add to the cheat sheet a way to cast, that's what this is called, typecasting, forcing something to be a number or forcing something to be a string.